Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is Chris Sost, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of The Entrepreneur's Mindset. Today is going to be all about data-driven rideshare strategies, but it can also be deployed as a courier service, or if you do food delivery. So hopefully you gain some value out of it. Data-driven, what do I mean by data-driven? Well, I firmly believe that Uber and Lyft, and any other TNC that's out there, is operating off of data. So they are making decisions based off of the data that they are taking in. So they will test a theory or they will test a process, and they will collect the data and see how it all shakes out. So why should rideshare drivers be any different? Now, I know that there is another strategy out there that a lot of people follow, which is, hey, Chris, I just want to turn on the app and go in whatever direction it takes me and earn whatever money comes my way that day. Cool. I'm not going to argue against that. But there are other options, and I do want to review this one a little bit more for those that are interested. So data-driven rideshare strategies. All that means at its basic premise is that you go out and you collect data on what you're doing. For example, when I started driving, I took my market, I took a map, and I drew a line, I outlined it, and then I sectioned it off into 6 equal quadrants. So, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And every single day I drove morning to night, and I drove in one quadrant all day. And then I drove in another quadrant all the next day. And I recorded every single ride. What time did it come in? What quadrant did it start in? What day of the week was it on? And after about 6 weeks, I had enough data to be able to look back and go, okay, if I am driving Monday morning, I should be in X quadrant between these hours to make the most amount of money during those hours. And at this time, this is the best quadrant to be in, and so forth and so on. Pretty simple, but it does require a fair bit of dedication, if you will, to collecting the data. It's really hard knowing that there's probably a better place to be picking up at that moment in time, but you're collecting data, so you're just letting it play out. So sacrificing for 4 to 6 weeks could be longer. Heck, it could be even less. That's completely up to you. This is, nothing set in stone in this strategy. But the more data you collect, the better. The more informed of a decision that you can make as a rideshare driver. And I believe, through my own personal experience and through getting kicked out of a local group for making more money than every other driver, that this was a great strategy to have. And, I brought it in from various sales positions that I had before. But it really worked, for me as a full-time rideshare driver back when I drove full-time. Even now when I drive part-time, when I first moved to Tampa about a year ago, even though I wasn't a full-time rideshare driver, I took 6 weeks and drove in every nook and cranny of this market, morning to night. And the reason why I did it was because I needed to know when and where were the best times to be driving. I learned that if you drive during the middle of the day here, there is a good possibility the top end that you will make or the revenue that you will generate in an hour's time is about $15. Not to mention, it's hot as fuck here, especially this time of year. And I drive a black car with black leather seats. So all those strikes against driving during the middle of the day for me. However, there are weekend opportunities, there are early mornings, there's late evenings, there's overnight driving, the list goes on, but you need to really analyze your own market because my experience in Tampa is completely different than others. Reason being, I am trying to identify certain riders that I would like to get over and over again. So I went out of my way to gather a list, about 15, but really only 11 of them request a ride on a weekly basis. And it's always a ride from way out in the suburbs, close to, the Gulf of Mexico, all the way into Tampa International. And since I upgraded my vehicle, they all request Select now. So they're all nice rides. Or Lyft Lux. I always try to find them the best price. You may be asking yourself, why would I go through all of this? And it's simple. It feels really good to wake up and say, you know what? If I go drive in this area for this long, I'm going to make roughly this amount of money. It feels good knowing how much you're going to make. For all the drivers out there that just like to just turn on the app and drive around, that's cool too. One of the tools that I was introduced to, I think about a year, maybe 2 years ago, actually definitely was 2 years ago, and was only available in a select few cities, but now it's in 19, is an app called Gridwise. I spoke about it in a previous episode, but I want to dive deeper into it because it is a tool that's also data-driven. As most rideshare drivers that drive full-time probably have on their phone, you probably have a flight tracker app. Tells you when the flights are coming in, whether they're on time, whether they're late, whether they're diverted, yada, yada, yada. All great information. Well, Gridwise takes that a little bit further, especially for the airports. In the cities that they operate in, they're actually able to collect more data about the manifests. So instead of just knowing that 24 flights are coming in this hour, you know that there's X amount of thousands of passengers estimated to be coming in on those flights. I am a firm believer that we as rideshare drivers give passengers rides from the airport. We don't pick up airplanes and take them from the airport. So knowing that, why would you not have an app that tells you passenger volumes? You look around and for me, I experienced it in DC and Baltimore. So BWI, Ronald Reagan, Dulles. I knew which airport to be at. More importantly, I knew what time to be there. There's a lot of drivers that just go to the lot and hey, if you're looking for a nap or you want to eat lunch, cool, like great place to go to do that. For me, I was a man on a mission. So I only entered the queue when I knew that, leading up to the hour that I wanted to be picking up a ride. So realistically, I never waited more than like 20 minutes for a ride. And I heard horror stories about people sitting out there for like almost 2 hours. And I was just like, damn. So Gridwise takes it, even further when it comes to this data. They actually have information based off of the events going on in your market. And just like with the airport, they tell you estimated people, the amount of people that are there. And more importantly, they alert you when they're leaving. Like when the concert lets out, you're notified. Don't ask me how they know this stuff. I have no idea. But, I ran into or bumped into Ryan Green, which is the co-founder and CEO of Gridwise on LinkedIn. And I've been bouncing messages back and forth because, I really appreciate people that come out with forward-thinking apps, geared towards a very unique rideshare driver. So, yeah, Maestro was cool. And, for a lot of people it works. It really never, touched me because I've always operated with two devices, whether it was a tablet and a phone or a phone and a phone. So for me, Maestro, I needed to have an Android. Cool. Like I'm not an Android person, but it's whatever. And even when I got it, I was just like I'm already used to having two phones or, bouncing back and forth. And there's certain things I do when I get two requests at the same time that I ensure that I get the best one. So for me, I didn't see a whole lot of value in Maestro, but I applaud, everybody that gets value out of any app that they use. So applying the Gridwise app or applying the Flight Tracker app to your other data that you're collecting you'll either A, see an increase in earnings because you'll pick the right hours to be out there, or you'll see a reduction in the amount of hours you drive. Either which way. So if you want to, drive 40 hours a week, no matter how much money you make, cool, you can do that. If you have a particular, dollar amount, so if you need to make $800 a week, obviously you are driven by how quick can I make that $800. And one of the things that I find very, very awesome about, Uber and Lyft is the fact that you can log in and out whenever the hell you want. So you can work really odd hours and, it's going to benefit you in the long run. Knowing when people are going to be requesting rides and more importantly, knowing who is requesting rides and when is very beneficial information. So this last segment is really all about using two free apps that you don't ever have to spend a dime on. And the first one is called the Uber Rider app, and the second one is called the Lyft Rider app. Now, a lot of you may not know this, but when you signed up to be an Uber or Lyft driver, they automatically created a rider account for you. They did that for business purposes. Don't worry, they didn't put in a fake credit card or anything like that. You already had a rider account before you ever even logged on to the rider app. So you might be asking yourself, why the hell would I want to look at a rider app these days? Now, for any drivers that were around in 2014 and 2015, you will know, and before that, you know that the Uber rider app was like fucking gold to drivers. Like, you could literally see every available driver in a market just by moving the pin around. Not to mention, one little caveat about that and why they move away the pin is Uber's algorithm used to calculate demand based off of pin movement. So every single time a user moved the pin, it generated another tick of app usage. So as you're probably starting to think, if not already, the more times you move the pin, the more action that's going on the Uber rider apps. The more action that's going on the Uber rider apps, the higher the surge, or the fact that surge will kick in because of the increased activity on the apps. Long story short, outside of just moving forward and growing, Uber had to go ahead and just get rid of that awesome feature for us, and now we can't have as much fun with it. But I will tell you this much: when it comes to the Uber and Lyft rider apps now, the way I use them, if I'm going to go out and free range drive on like a Friday night and there's really no events going on that I know of, what I do is I jump in the Uber app while I'm still in my driveway, and I drop a pin in, any point in the city, and I just watch the cars. And when they disappear and then they reappear or another car appears, you can tell the ride volume based off of when cars disappear. So if you move your pin to a certain area and you're seeing cars constantly disappear and then other cars appearing and then disappearing, you know that is an area where there's high ride volume requests. I can't even make this up. Like, it's that simple. So if you're a new driver, all you have to do is open up the Uber and Lyft rider apps to figure out where's the best place to drive during that time around the city. I know we love to go on social media and ask people, where are the best spots to drive, but I can tell you that the vast majority of them will not tell you their spots. They will highlight publicly advertised events, sporting events, concerts, whatever, but they're not giving up their honey holes, rightfully so. So these two apps, and you deploy this with, the other strategy of knowing, the time of day and where to be in order to get those rides, and you're starting to see a much more complete and what I feel to be a less stressful rideshare experience as a driver. There's something nice. It's a great feeling to have when you wake up and you're like, damn, between 8 and 10 I have to be in this area because I know I can generate X amount of dollars of revenue during that time period. And at this time of day, I need to be over here because I generate X amount of dollars in revenue for that time period. And then, oh man, my strategy fell through. Like the data points aren't adding up today because there's an anomaly. Cool. Pop open the Uber and Lyft rider apps and find out where things are going on. Open up the Gridwise app and see, what the passenger volume is like, at the airport or what events are going on. So if Gridwise isn't available in your market, it's only available in 19 cities, but they are expanding. I believe, they're on track to be in every major city in the United States by the end of 2019, maybe mid 2020. If you don't have those things, Facebook is a great place. You go into events and you look for events near me, and it tells you a whole fucking schedule of events that are scheduled all around you. It tells you how many people are RSVP'd, yada, yada, yada. What I look for in that information is where is there an event of at least a few hundred people that's in an area where rideshare drivers don't normally hang out for rides. I want to be there when that event lets out, because there's not a whole lot of rideshare drivers that hang out in that area, and I know that there's an event going on there. The whole point of this episode is to break outside of the norm for rideshare these days, which is just popping on the app and just driving aimlessly, or just going to the airport and sitting for hours upon hours upon hours upon hours waiting for rides. There's a whole nother strategy, which is just driving around in circles I'm not going to say that it's a bad strategy. You just have to deploy that strategy a little bit more, what would you say, a little bit more tactically. So with that, I'm tying up my words. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you find any kind of value in this, like or subscribe or, wherever the hell you're looking at this at or listening to it at, give it a good old like or subscribe to the channel. I plan on just bringing more information to drivers. I'm going to leave everything else up to anybody else that wants to deliver any other information to drivers. For me, it's just, how do I work, or how do we work within the system that we currently have right now? With that, thank you guys so very much and have a wonderful day.